one thing from your NFL playoffs childhood a younger person would not understand. P. Schrags, what do you think?
It's amazing now because we think of Sean McVay and all the pomade he has in his hair. But when I think back to my childhood and watching football at a young age, I think of another coach who had perfect hair, and when they finally won a Super Bowl, to tussle his hair was like the biggest storyline.
Right.
I'm talking about Jimmy Johnson, who had the best hair in all of football, and then when the Cowboys finally won, this was like a big thing.
Yeah.
We're going to rub his hair. This was like the biggest deal when I was in my middle school and high school, that they actually played with Jimmy's hair.
Jimmy's hair was out of whack.
Jimmy's hair was like a whole thing. It was Clinton and his saxophone, and it was Jimmy Johnson and that hair and that helmet. Here's Jerry.
Jerry does it.
I'm going to get some hair. Give me a hug.
They used to love each other.
This is the most 1992 thing ever. Jimmy Johnson's hair being tussled was such a storyline in football. They finally got him. They finally got to it. They tussled his hair.
Like Adrian Beltre's head.
Exactly right. Something like that.
Crazy.
Tussle that hair.
So that would have been trending on Twitter?
Oh,
they got
Jimmy's
Jimmy.
hair.
They got his hair.
Yes, they actually got it out of whack and still hasn't been moved since.
Hasn't moved since.
Looks fantastic.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
I remember being just a kid back in Chicago and seeing this game, because we're talking a lot today about whether or not the Patriots are underdogs. What about when they were actually the underdogs? Super Bowl 36, taking on the Rams. The Rams were favored by 2 touchdowns, guys. In this one, in comes Brady, tying the game on a 26-yard touchdown pass. Vinatieri doing this thing, of course. It was just an incredible game, changing of the guard and the launch of the dynasty that people think went back and lasted forever. I think kids that are in high school now just think the Patriots have been good forever. But that's not the case. They had their dark times as well. It didn't start until that.
I remember the SI cover. It was Ty Law hitting Kurt. I remember the halftime show. It was U2. And I remember LA was supposed to, St. Louis, was just supposed to blow them off the field.
I remember them walking out as a team.
I was going to say the significance of it, the 9/11 year, them coming out with the American flag, Joe Andruzzi leading them onto the field. Really emotional Super Bowl win, and it was nothing more fitting than their team being called the Patriots. And Robert Kraft afterwards says, "We're all Patriots," which was awesome.
That's incredible. Bart, how do you follow that? What do you got?
Well, for me, I know all the kids, all these millennials now, they play Madden and they understand they love playing in these tournaments. But guess what? Not only was he a coach, but he was probably the most influential for me color commentator on television. So I remember Pat Summerall and all the big games and all his quotes, but I used to love when he pulled out the telestrator and would say, boom, you got a seal here, a seal there. He just broke the game down like only he could with all the simple words, but he painted pictures with his words. Like he would draw over the plays still going. He's drawing on the screen. It was
Give me another Madden impression. That was good.
Ooh, tough acting to acting.
Yeah, boom, right?
Boom.
But like Madden sometimes would illustrate the fans in the stands. And you got the nachos here, and you got the beer here, and he would circle it, and you were just loving it at home. That's so good. Mine is, we're going to go back to August Bush III of the Anheuser-Busch Company.
Got it.
He got tired of spending all this money on Super Bowl ads, and then the game would be a blowout. A lot of those 80s Super Bowls were terrible. So he had an idea. He said, I'm going to do a new game, and I'm going to take something that looks like this. This is your classic Bud Heavy, and I'm going to take your classic Bud Light, and I'm going to invent something called the Bud Bowl. And there's going to be a game throughout the game where the bottles compete against each other. And what it was there was 5 or 6 chapters of a Bud Bowl, which is a football game animated between bottles. And even when the game was a blowout, the ratings showed that people were staying tuned in to watch the Bud Bowl. This thing was so funny and so creative. The coach of one of the teams was Beer Bryant. The quarterback was Budway Joe. We had Bob Costas doing play-by-play, Chris Berman doing updates, Keith Jackson got involved. At one point, it was always pun-laden. So it was like, and the stands are candemonium. And they would get in the fight, and they go, ding, 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 ding. We've got a real brew, ha-ha. And then they'd be like, they introduced the Secret Warrior, came like Bud Bowl 2 or 3, and here comes Bud Dry out of the tray. Why ask why? Give him a try. The Bud Bowl, to me, was such a weird 80s animation sort of wave of the future, but I don't care if John Elway was down by 5 touchdowns. I got to see if Bud Light makes the winning kick to beat Budweiser. Bart, you remember it?
Yes, I do, but what I want to know is, how's your back feeling? Have you had that in your pocket the whole show?
I always have 2 beers in my pocket at all points of time. One heavy, one light.
More than once?
Oh, there was like 7 or 8 of them.
They had the refrigerator once come in.
Yeah, no, they did a music video. Before they were a Puppy Bowl and all that other stuff, it was the Bud Bowl.
Bring it back.
Always delivered.
Bring it back.
And then you crack it. I don't know. I would love to have it be back.
Those Clydesdales?
Maybe so. They make you cry, but I like these.